1895/6. At the dawn of moving pictures in the late 19th century, it was a novelty of cinema that attracted people, as no one had ever seen anything like it before. In Britain, Robert W. Paul and Britt Akers built and run one of the first working 35mm movie camera called Canopticon. Their first films include Rough Sea at Dover and the Oxford and Cambridge University boat race. But it was the Lumiere brothers that started off what cinema has become today. When they developed their camera, the cinematograph, that could record, develop and project moving images at 16 frames per second, they had their first paying audience to see their short films, known as actuality films, which just showed things happening in front of the camera. Some of their films include Blacksmiths, The Exit from the Lumiere factory in Lyon, and Arrival of a Train at Lecoit. When their film of the train was showed, people ran out of the cinema in fear as they thought they were going to get hit by it. This was because no one had seen a film before and thought it was real. 1900 to 1905. It was during these years that a famous illusionist and filmmaker named Georges Méliès pushed the boundaries of cinema even further by introducing the use of scenes, but only to the effect of a theatre, like when a curtain comes down and there is a change of scene. He was also known for discovering that cinema had the capacity for manipulating and distorting time and space. With this in mind, he explained his initial ideas and created some special effects. These included the first double exposure in Le Cave and Mordite, the first split screen with actors acting opposite themselves in Un homme de tête, and the first dissolve which can be seen in Cendrillon. 1909. Edwin S. Porter, the man who is considered to be the father of film editing and narrative filmmaking. He had the ability to construct and tell a story from multiple shots rather than a whole story taking place in front of a stationary camera. Porter was also the first to use found footage and make it into a story he wanted to tell that was unrelated to what the footage was intended for. This is the era when editing began to turn into an art form. It was with his film Life of an American Fireman that showed cinema had transformed by the use of cutting between two different scenes. An example of this is when the woman and child are in the burning house and it cuts to the firemen on the way to rescue them. Another film of Porter's that shows the progression of editing is The Great Train Robbery. The very last shot is a close-up of a man shooting a gun towards the camera 6 times. This had never been done before, and it must have created fear in the audience with the use of the close-up, as it puts the idea across that you are stood face to face with the man shooting. 1910s. It was during 1910 to 20 that a filmmaker named D.W. Griffith developed Porter's approach into a set of rules, or devices as he called them. These were continuity editing, close-ups, flashbacks, cross-cutting and special effects. In some of his films from this era, such as Fighting Blood and Under the Burning Skies, he used cross-cut editing to build up the tension. This can be seen in Birth of a Nation when the town is being overrun and it keeps cutting away to some people panicking in their house. But it was with his films Birth of a Nation and Intolerance that you see some of his techniques he uses, such as match-on-match editing, which is the use of connecting two shots so that they've linked together to form a continuous shot. For example, in Birth of a Nation you see a group of people walking through a door and the next shot is the last person to come through the door. It was with his use of long shots, close-ups, parallel action and flashbacks that have given us classical or continuity editing. 1920s. It was the Russian filmmakers like Eisenstein, Vertov and Khrushchev who rejected Griffith's use of continuity editing and came up with the theory of montage. It's basically that you can put two completely unrelated shots together to create a third different meaning. Eisenstein thought that montage editing could guide the audience through certain feelings and ideas. This is shown in Battleship Potemkin during the Odessa step sequence. He manipulates the audience's perception of time by stretching out how long it takes the crowd to get down the steps for around 6 minutes, which is a lot longer than it would have taken. Part of the sequence shows a baby's pram rolling away, and he cuts it with close-ups of people looking shocked and scared. This shows Eisenstein using montage to arouse emotion and place the idea of what if that was your child or family member. You can also see montage put to the test in Khrushchev's experiment when Khrushchev showed his experiment and asked people what they thought the emotion the actor was feeling. They told him hungry at the sight of the soup, sad when they seen the child, and then lust when he seen the woman. Throughout the clip, the same shot of the man is used 3 times, which proves that the theory of montage worked. 1930s. The 1930s presented us with new technology of sound recording, allowing talking pictures, but some filmmakers reject this as they think it replicates real life too closely and that it was a backward step for film. It was the lead up to World War II where propaganda films were introduced. During this time, a filmmaker working in Nazi Germany called Riefenstahl created one of the best known propaganda films, Triumph of the Will. Despite its controversial subject, the film is still recognised for its revolutionary approach to using music and cinematography. Animation also began to use propaganda, which companies such as Walt Disney and Looney Tunes actively aided the US war efforts through their cartoons. One of the most popular, The Führer's Face, was a means of relieving the aggression against Hitler by making him into a comical figure while showcasing the freedom America offered. 1950s. The French New Wave is widely regarded as one of the most influential movements to take place in cinema. It was started by a small group of film critics who wrote for a French film journal. These critics included Jean-Luc Godard, Francis Truffaut, and Claude Chabrol, just to name a few. It was the French New Wave that we see jump cuts, handheld camera work, and natural sound used. A jump cut is when a scene is cut forward in time, be it seconds or years, but within the same shot. An example of this can be seen in Godard's film Breathless, when someone shoots someone and all you see is the gun being pointed and then a jump cut to someone falling over. Other innovations of the French New Wave included a large use of close-ups and a lack of establishing shots. This was because the filmmakers were more about the mise-en-scene, and that the viewer was supposed to feel the setting, not necessarily see it. 1960s. By this time, all editing convention had been established and were being used. Technological advances mean lighter and smaller cameras, allowing them to film where they couldn't with old ones. Colour had become the standard and was widely being used in the film industry. Directors such as Alfred Hitchcock, Francis Ford Coppola, Stanley Kubrick and George Lucas create some of the most famous films in history, such as The Godfather and The Shining. Alfred Hitchcock's film Psycho uses a vast range of editing techniques available and to a high standard. He uses music to create a lot of suspense. This can be seen in the famous shower scene. Modern cinema. With all the editing conventions and new technologies such as CGI and cameras becoming even better than they were with HD capabilities and faster frame rates, directors can create some amazing films. A really good example of CGI can be seen in The Matrix by Larry and Andy Wachowski, released in 1999, in the scene where Neo and an agent are stood on top of a building and Neo is being shot at and dodges the bullets. This is what is commonly known as the bullet time effect. Another great movie that uses CGI is The Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring. It is seen throughout the film in many aspects, but the one that stands out is the character Smeagol. The character was made by using motion capture shoots so that it could animate the body for Smeagol. If you look how editing has changed over the past 100 years and how far we have come from the 1900s, it just makes you think what might change in the next 100 years for editing.